please come to the microphone, direct your questions to the mayor and council, and I will have whoever it needs to respond to your question. At some point in time, we'll entertain individual comments above and beyond the questions. But at this point in time, that's the way that I would like for this to proceed. When we get to the public comment portion of this public hearing, if you have a thought that you want to express and somebody has gotten up before you and expressed that same thought, please be courteous and just agree with that thought. That registers that we now have two people thinking that things get done much more timely and we don't spend all night long going round and round about the same issue over and over and over again. And I would thank you for your courtesy on that. So with that being said, Mrs. Rogers, I think you're up.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor and Council, and those of you that are in attendance this evening. You go to your first slide.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Okay. Sorry.
Love technical difficulties.
Yeah, techno. All right.
Okay, thank you. So as we begin, I feel it's important to provide the historical references of the projects. Go back one. Okay.
Sorry,
yes.
yeah.
So I'm going to go through 3 water facility reports the town has undertaken since 2007. And purposes of those reports were to address the town's goals for future development of the comprehensive plan, to allow for daily demands and contingencies such as firefighting within the system, determine existing and future needs to adequately deliver water to users, and plan for the existing town property annexation areas. So these 4 points were a common theme among the reports. As the 2008 report, as you can read, it already accounted for growth within the commercial industrial areas of Cannery Village, Heritage Creek, on Route 16 in the south end of Milton. Also included are residential areas and to include apartment and senior citizen complexes, which if you think of those are Park Royal, Luther Towers, Luther Gardens, and Milton Landing, including Wagman's West Shores, Preserve on the Broadkill, Cannery Village, Heritage Creek, and the River Walk on the Broadkill. Next slide. In the 2008 water facilities master plan is broken up into multiple sections. The first section was water supply and treatment. The first recommendation was to abandon well 5, and for those of you unfamiliar, well 5 is located from the Tidewater wastewater treatment facility. There's a small white building that does house a well and small treatment. It was recommended to install a new well prior to 2010 to replace well 5. Next was to establish a location for a well field, which was to serve multiple wells with single treatment. At the time of the report, as I said, in 2008, that project was estimated at $900,000. And that was the first 2 wells in a single treatment building. The next stage was to complete stage 2 monitoring, October 1st, 2013. Install a central control panel and a SCADA system to monitor and control the existing well and future supply, storage, and treatment equipment. At that time was $100,000. And to also develop source water protection maps and ordinances. Now, one thing as we go through slides, some of these projects will sound familiar as completion, and we'll talk about those then. Next slide. The next section of the report was water storage. The first was to continue contracting tank maintenance services, and the town has done that annually. Construct a new storage tank to meet the town's current needs and large enough for at least the next 5 years. The recommendation was a 500,000 gallon tank, a finished size of 725,000 gallons, sorry. At the time of the report, the project was estimated at $1.5 million. And a second tank in years 2015 to 2016 would be necessary with the continued growth rates. The recommendation was another 500,000 gallon tank, estimated at $1.75 million. So when the town looks to calculate the storage capacity, there are 2 components to that calculation. The first is a 10-state standard guideline, which discusses fire demand, which is reflective of combining daily domestic demand at 1,500 gallons per minute for 2 hours to be reserved in storage, in addition to the daily demand capacity. So in 2008, that calculation was 464,000 gallons. Next slide. The next section will discuss the water distribution system. The recommendations were to upgrade weak areas in the water system to improve service and fire protection, expand large diameter water main loop within the town limits and to expand into the annexation area as of the 2003 comprehensive plan. Identify aging water mains and replace the concrete and cast iron pipes. Replace any remaining lead gooseneck service connections. Adjust, repair, and replace defective fire hydrants. Determine a location for the 500,000 gallon storage tank. Install a 12-inch water main on San Lucas to Cave Neck Road. Then install from Cave Neck Road to a new water main planned on Atlantic Street or Front Street, whichever the connection where the dead end existed. And install a 10-inch water main between Wagaman's West Shores and Federal Street. And lastly, continue to expand water mains naturally as the town grew. That project itself was estimated at $2.56 million. So after that report was completed, town officials undertook the details and proposed a referendum in 2012. The proposal was to borrow $3.45 million. It was based on the 2008 report. The projects projected at that time were to install the water main loop, to purchase land, to construct a water tower, install 2 wells and treatment plants. The existing conditions that we knew is that we needed 500,000 gallons in the air, 1 treatment plant to serve the daily consumption of 350,000 gallons to ranging to 600,000 gallons per day, plus have the fire protection the town needed. The referendum failed 260 to 124. So in 2012, the town undertook another water facilities planning study to review the system, the 2008 report. The recommendations were to continue to comply with stage 1 and 2 environmental monitoring and reporting as recommended, to go ahead and increase our water allocation permits to existing wells to be 750,000 gallons per day, upgrade existing well pumps, backup generators, supply lines, and a control system to increase our pumping capacity. And this was to alleviate the system, not having storage in the air, so we could run the well pumps concurrently to provide the daily demand and fire suppression needed. Test and reactivate well 5, or to establish a new well and backup generator as a backup source to assist during emergencies. Next recommendation was extend water mains to connect dead-end mains and replace older problematic mains. Priority was given to a 10-inch main that we needed to install to connect Wagaman's West Shores to upgrade Chestnut Street and Atlantic Avenue. It also recommended to develop a capital improvement plan to set aside funding to adequately maintain the system, to replace poorly performing components, and perform a rate study and an impact fee study. The last 2 were to map and model the system so we could evaluate current performance. Next slide. The town then came forward with a 2013 town referendum, proposed to borrow $1.725 million. The town reduced the scope of work, again based on our 2 reports now from 2008 and 2012. The projects were to rehab well 5. As I said, it's in the floodplain area in front of Tidewater. Construct a water main loop for Wagaman's West Shores to Federal and Chestnut Street connectors. Upgrade the control system for integration of the wells, and repair the shipbuilder's water tower foundation. Again, that referendum failed, 151 to 141. Next slide. Next slide. So then the town undertook another planning report to see what components were in dire need in 2015 to 2016. We are focused on completing the mapping and modeling of the water system, and the focus on the distribution elements for fire flow availability and system resilience, along with the system pressures and the size and conditions of our existing mains. To develop a summary report and recommendations for improvements, which focus on fire flow capacity, system resiliency, the ability to operate during and after a large storm or emergency event, focus on water quality and capacity, and removing lead components from our project areas. The report was completed in 2017, and the objectives were, again, install the Wagaman's water main extension, install a new well and construct a new treatment facility, build a new storage facility with 500,000 gallon capacity on the southern side of the roadkill. That point was a reoccurring theme about the southern side of the roadkill as our current capacity and storage on the north side. Replacing failing water mains on Atlantic Avenue, Bay Avenue, Chestnut Street, Atlantic Street, Route 16, and Orchard Street, and again, continue to improve low flow hydrants and remove lead and gooseneck services from the project areas. In 2018, we had a referendum to borrow $895,000 based on now 3 reports, focusing on the project to the shipbuilder's well and treatment plant and the Waggaman's West Shore to Federal Street water main loop. We passed the referendum. Good news for Milton, 493 to 38. That was a Delaware Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan for 20 years and 2% term, and that is where the $8.50 debt service fee on all utility accounts originated. We also followed up with a 2021 referendum proposal to borrow $1.67 million, still based on the 3 reports. Our project areas were to replace water main on Atlantic Avenue, a portion of Chestnut Street, and a portion of Atlantic Street. The referendum passed 341 to 4, the same terms to Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. For this project, we were granted 100% principal forgiveness at completion. There was no additional debt service on this project. You can click through those.
Okay.
So again, to report on progress of all those reports, the Waggaman's water main extension is completed. The new well and constructing a treatment facility is complete. That was at shipbuilders. We still have remaining the new storage facility with 500,000 gallon capacity. We have replaced the Atlantic Avenue water main, the Chestnut Street main, Atlantic Street main. And in the project areas, we have increased the low flow hydrants and removed lead services in the project areas. Additional progress is out of general funds. We have the shipbuilders tower did receive a new foundation. I think that was in like 2016. We adopted a source water wellhead protection maps and ordinance. We purchased property on Federal Street in 2019. We have awarded the potable well contract for the well drilling, which will begin this month. We will then finish the design of a treatment plant once the well is drilled. We have completed the water main replacement on Reed Street. We have contracted with 120 Water to meet our October 2024 EPA deadlines for lead and copper inventory and replacement. And we have adopted a cross-connection control compliance plan and contracted with the National Water Specialties Company to enact that plan and meet the February 2024 EPA deadline. So this evening, we're going to talk more in detail about the next referendum proposal projects, which are water main replacement under Cary Street, Walnut Street, Magnolia Street, Mill Street, and a portion of Bay Avenue. We need critical improvements to Chandler Street Treatment Facility, and then the Water Street Water Tower, which has been the recurring theme through the project, reports of 500,000 gallons. These projects will have a goal of improving the water system distribution and hydraulic conditions, increase the fire flow capacity, which has been a known comment throughout the reports, upgrade dimensions of existing water mains. The ones proposed will go from a 4-inch main to a 6-inch main, replace services within those project areas, which will improve functions, and then also improve the functions of the treatment plant to upgrade controls above the 100-year floodplain.
Good evening. My name is Brian Miller. I'm with Pinoti, the town engineer for these projects. Just have a few slides here to give you a little more background on each of the projects. The slide we're looking at now just kind of lists each of the projects and introduces the funding sources. So the Delaware Drinking Water State Revolving Fund is the source of the funding. The town and Pinoti went through an extensive application process to go through their evaluation. At first, just as a notice and initial application, and there's a larger, more detailed application, almost research paper like information that you have to submit. And once you get through that process, you get to the point where we are now, where we're looking at, is the town willing to enter into the agreement with the state revolving fund? The state revolving fund receives their money from the Build America, Buy America Act that is currently funding infrastructure projects probably for about a 5-year period. And I think right now we're in year two of that run. So the water main replacement, what we're looking at, Tom, on the next slide, please. So we're looking at Cary Street, Walnut Street, Magnolia Street, Mill Street, and a portion of Bay Avenue that's not shown on that image. It's from U to Sussex, right near the Cypress Grove project. And the water main in these areas is at least 25 years old. And Tom, if you switch to the next slide. So why we're looking at replacing the pipes within this area, age over 25 years, some cases definitely more. A lot of these mains were built at a time when a 4-inch water main was an acceptable size. Due to current requirements and current regulations, 4 inches is no longer considered an applicable size for water main distribution piping, and even fire hydrant stubs are a minimum 6-inch diameter. So what we're looking at is also main breaks associated with asbestos cement piping, old cast iron that collects silt and sediment on the sides and degrades water quality over time. We're looking to improve flow capacity by increasing the pipe size and creating, using pipe that's now better for flow capacity itself. The emergency fire flow levels will then increase in those areas, allowing for greater fire flow in emergency situations, and fire hydrants and valves in those areas will also be replaced. And if any lead service lines were found in those areas, those would end up being included in the project in compliance with the new EPA regulations. So Tom, on the next page. So the next project is the Chandler Street Water Treatment Plant. And right now that water treatment plant handles the wells 2, 4, 5, and 7. 5 is not really in use right now. But it treats about 80% of Milton's water supply in that area. But the plant is severely outdated. As Mrs. Rogers alluded to earlier, there was a time when SCADA monitoring project was considered, but that never took place. So that's part of what we're looking at the scope of work on the right side of the slide. So what we would be doing with the Chandler Street Water Treatment Plant is adding new chemical storage, improving the chemical feed system for better water quality. We would be adding pressure monitoring and supervisory control and data acquisition, which becomes the SCADA acronym. That allows the town better operation and remote monitoring. They can monitor pressure, they can record pressure and record their flow meter data more accurately over time and get a better picture of what's happening to the system on an ongoing basis. We'd also replace the piping through the treatment plant, improve the electrical system and update it to current code, and then also install a standby emergency generator so that the water system could operate in full when there's a power outage for an extended period of time. And then on the final slide I have there. The Federal Street Water Tower, as you can tell from what Mrs. Rogers described to everybody so far, we've been tracking a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank for some time. Current daily demand exceeds what your current storage is. And at the bottom of the slide, you see a recommendation, AWWA, which is American Water Works Association, and 10 State Standards, which is the regulation group that the State Drinking Water Authority uses for guidance on drinking water recommendations. And each of those bodies looks at elevated storage or water storage for a system be recommended to at least be equal to their daily demand plus emergency fire service. So that's how we're coming up with the 500,000 gallons. And right now, that, as you can tell, with only 225,000 gallons of storage in the air, the town is well below their daily demand plus a fire service level. So the proposed tank location, what you see is on the picture on the right is an elevated water tower similar to the two that the town has now. The proposed tank on Federal Street for that location, the overflow elevation would be about 142 feet high at an elevation, which makes the tank about 130 feet in height. The bulb diameter, which is the bulb diameter at the widest point, is 56 feet. And we're looking at the foundation below that is 30 feet in diameter, and then that gives you a head range, which is the water stored volume range of about 37 feet. So the tank itself is going to be similar in height to the two existing, because the water system uses gravity flow and the pressure by the elevation of the tank. So if you look at all three tanks together, there's going to be a similar elevation in the air. They might look one a little taller than the other, but the elevation based on their location is going to be similar. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you, Brian. So everyone asks, what's the cost and what are the affordability elements for the town of Milton? So the proposed projects total $6.214 million. That broken out is the water main replacements at $1.785 million. The Chandler Street treatment facility upgrades, $579,000, and the Federal Street water tower, $3.85 million. These are DWSRF project loans. The town received a conditional approval in October of 2023. We were provided the same 2% interest 20-year term. Grant and principal forgiveness were not eligible for Milton this year. We were deemed financially affordable, and we could not be classified as a disadvantaged community. So the estimated debt service for all three projects is $48 per quarter per unit. And those are broken down as follows. So the water main replacement is $13 per unit per quarter. Chandler Street treatment facility is $5 per unit per quarter. And the Federal Street tower is $30 per unit per quarter. So as you can see from these cost estimates and what is projected, and what I discussed in the 2008 report and past referendums, the cost of deferral is significant. This water tower could have been constructed in 2008 for $1.5 million with the added improvements to connect to the system with a well. The project just for the tower this time is $3.8 million. Excuse me. So these are large loans, but again, the town will be in a great position, I feel, once these projects are completed. When I looked at reports again today to look at the 2017 report, if we are approved and proceed to the Federal Street Tower, we will have completed the project on that 2017 report. We're already working on another grant project for the water system to then evaluate the system in 2024 to be able to determine what projects would be next. What areas in town do we need to see other water main improvement projects? Like last week, we had 3 main breaks. It happens. Our system in the downtown and older part, they're old, they're concrete pipes, they're cast iron pipes. We're experiencing more and more breaks more frequently. Next slide. So what process we have to move forward with is provided in Town Charter Section 33. So referendum is required to borrow any project funds. On November 6th, we passed Resolution 2023-024, which was the scheduled tonight's public hearing on proposed borrowing of $6.214 million. That public hearing notice was published on the town website and in the Cape Gazette. Tonight is our public hearing on the project, and council has the opportunity to vote on another resolution to schedule the referendum. Already looking ahead at the calendar in the charter, the referendum must occur between 30 and 60 days from the public hearing. That proposed date is January 27th. Now's an opportunity for questions.
All right, does anybody from the council have any specific questions they'd like to ask the engineer, Mrs. Rogers?
I do.
Please.
Okay. What is the lifespan of a water main?
For water mains with the current materials, if
Yeah.
you would build it now, you could probably expect a 50-year duration.
I apologize. All right. And what about the water mains that, what's the lifespan of the ones that we are looking to possibly replace?
Not knowing all the dates and knowing that a lot of the mains that we're looking at are asbestos cement pipe and cast iron, which over time become brittle, and being as they're at 25-year periods, they're basically at the end of their typical lifespan.
And would you expect the price of a water tower to go down at any point in the future?
I would not, and if you looked at the pricing before COVID and after COVID, you will see a very significant increase, and that happens within a 6-month to a year period because the steel prices went through the roof, and the lead times for everything extended, and the costs have not really retreated.
Thank you.
I have a question about the cost of the water. There are a lot of communities in Sussex County who get their water from artesian. If we compare the cost per quarter for our average household, how does it compare to artesian cost? Do you know?
So I do not have specifics, but what we could see as a year ago, just off the basic calculation, they were at least 50 to 70% higher than Milton.
So they are 50% higher than we are at this time.
Yes. And a comparison, if you were to view your wastewater treatment bill, to see a flat rate of $84, I believe it is, plus their per 1,000 gallon rates, you can even see on that perspective, it's a lot higher. When you have a company that has shareholders and that they have a different operational structure, they're motivated to make a profit, whereas a town wants to just break even on its system.
So Milton Water is a bargain.
Absolutely.
I want to really make that point. This is really important.
Yes, I would like to say my name is Fred Harvey. I'm town council, and also I am I'm the chairman for the water committee. And I would just like to let everyone know that the water committee is 100% behind the town to go ahead and go with this project. For all 3 projects, we did a vote and it passed unanimously for all 3. And also, if some of you, I'm a lifetime member. I'm a lifetime member in Milton. So I've seen some of the pipes when they was put in, and I've seen some being taken out. And back in the day when they was putting them in, you didn't know what it was they was using. You just saw putting pipe in. Now when you go to dig that up, you find out that it could be anything, as long as it held water good at that time. And to get that now, you don't know exactly the way the system, the way it is, you don't know exactly where a cutoff valve is or main valve is, because they just put it in. And if they didn't have to put it in, they didn't put none in. And with this, what we need to get this money for will really help the town. Where Milton is behind, we don't have, if we was to have a big fire, a few years ago we had a large fire out there on Route 16 where it's called the Beaches now, but it was another restaurant there. We had a fire. And what happened to the town? We sucked the water out. The town went low. They didn't have enough, and we were still using that same system. We haven't had much of an upgrade since then. If we was to have a major fire now, the companies, the people that live not close to a tower will be in trouble. They would be the first ones, like in Heritage Street and all. They're going to be the first ones to get, they just won't have no water. And until we can get that straightened out, we don't get this tower, and until we can get some storage for some water, we are hurting ourselves. We're not hurting anybody else, it's hurting ourselves. So, yes, the money, yes, it's costing a lot more than it did if it had been done years ago. But that's beside the point. It's something now that we want everybody to do. When you go to your referendum, vote yes for it, because this town needs it. We have the best water around. So I'm just asking you to please help us, help your town out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Harvey. I don't have any questions, but I have a comment or two. I think you've heard some recurring themes tonight. This is not something that we just dreamt up yesterday. We've been looking at this and studying and restudying for a considerable amount of time. And I realize that the cost is steep, but again, it's been brought up, that's the cost of deferral. Now, I've been in town 22 years, and every water referendum that's come along, I have voted positively for. And not one of those referendums or any of the projects happened in my neighborhood or improved the quality of my water service in my neighborhood. But I voted for it because it's the right thing to do for the community. And I would encourage everybody to set that aside at this particular point in time. We're a community, and I'd like to remain one, and I get it sometimes. I do. I want a fixed income like a lot of you are, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for the good of the greater good of all. So that's it. That's just my comment. So,
Mayor and Council, if I may make one other comment about the debt service fee and how we calculate that and how this proposed for the projects. So the town has two methods. We can either have a flat rate, fee increase, or we can go through the route of adding debt service to a water bill. Why debt service is chosen? Because if debt service is paid off, you can see that fee recalculated, reduced, or potentially even removed from your bill. As the current project from 2018 for the 850, once that hits the repayment period, that will come off a bill. These three projects are proposed $48 per quarter per unit, and every new unit added to the system will pay that fee. No one is exempt. So there has been some misconceptions in town that as there is growth, that they will not experience that fee, and that is not accurate. Every unit connected will have that debt service. And as the town adds units, that fee potentially could decrease because we have one pot of money that we have borrowed, and if we add 200 units, 300, 400 units, we can recalculate that fee to be potentially lower on the next year's billing period. Or council could elect to prepay that debt. There's new prepayment penalty. So we can review those options during the budget time as it's introduced for 2025.
thank you for that comment, Mrs. Rogers. It leads me to one additional one. The one thing that hasn't been said here today was none of these proposals are in anticipation of the coming growth. These proposals are to service what was on our books at the first study. It didn't take into consideration what we're now looking at in annexations or growth or anything else. That's another thing in itself and entirely, but the new properties that come on, they're putting in the infrastructure to maintain themselves at their expense, not at yours. So That's one thing to understand. None of this is to benefit any new growth. This is to take care of what we have today. And, you know, we've gotten here. This has been put off and put off and put off. Well, tomorrow's here. We're entering into the last phases of the subdivisions that drove these reports and this need. And now they're breaking ground on them. And, you know, it's just not something that I'm comfortable with deferring it for another year or 2 years. The funding doesn't make itself available every year. We have to compete with every other municipality in the state. Some years we make the cut, some years we don't. And I'm afraid we're running out of time to take a pass on any of it. Thank you. All right, anybody else from the front? Questions, comments? All right, I'd like to open it up to the public. As I said before, you know, come to the microphone as you wish, address your questions and comments to the council. If there's something that there's an answer needed for, we will direct the proper person to answer your question. If you've already heard what you wanted to say, said, at least stand up and say, I agree with that guy or this person or this individual. You know, we want to hear you, but we don't want to get to the point where it's over and over and over a recurring theme. So with that being said, the microphone is open to the public. Please come to the front. As a matter of fact, you know, if you'll just form a line down the center and fall in line as you see the need.
Good evening, council. This is Rogers, our engineer.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Sorry, I'm Harry Higgs, 146 West Shore Drive. Harry Higgs. I first want to say thanks. I've been looking at the background. This is Rogers covered tonight, and it's clear in my mind that the town needs the extra capacity, and I appreciate the folks who look after our water business and give us potable drinking water, fix broken pipes, and make it look easy when I turn on my faucet and I got something to drink. One comment I have with regard to rates. It's not useful to compare rates for an investor-owned utility versus a municipality. That's apples and oranges. If you were to do a rate comparison, you would compare different municipalities, compare Milton to the surrounding area, and then see where you end up. That's a little more comparable, the way the systems are run. That's my little remark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Higgs. Good evening, Mr. Guard.
Sam Guard, 115 Sassafras Lane. Just a few comments I agree with the comments from Councilman Harvey, sorry, and the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guard.
My name is Jeff Coogan Cameron, 140 West Shore Drive. First of all, thanks for the information, something that we've been definitely wanting. I think there's interesting that these other 500,000 gallon proposals have not been passed. And I'm curious to see how the public views the information that they're able to get and ascertain. So I hope this presentation will be available on the website. It was not today, but it would be great to have that. The more informed, we're talking about a lot of money and a big project. And I still would like to suggest that, or at least throw out the idea that's been generated, maybe that Sam Lucas would be a good place for this. This is a large water tower. It is a much larger diameter. It's 3.3 times the size of the one on Chandler. So it will maybe be similar height, but it would be far, far greater in diameter and size. So it'd be much more appropriate rather than being in a small street in a small town on the edge of town. That's where most of the other towns around are looking to build, like Lewis looking outside their city limits on property to build.
If I may, Lewis is different than Milton because Lewis has a Board of Public Works and it's a separate entity from the city of Lewis. So they serve one another, but the town doesn't have any jurisdiction in that, or not a lot.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I may add a comment real quick, we are trying to record the presentation. We can add it to the website tomorrow if the space allows.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Maurice McGrath, 137 West Shore Drive. I commend what everyone has said, the job that Mrs. Rogers and
Brian Miller, done. This is a can that's been kicked down the road for decades, and I believe we're pretty much at the end of the road with this. And I would ask everybody really to vote yes on this, because it's something that the town needs for now. As you said, Mr. Mayor, it's for what we know is of the town now, not with any new development, any annexations or anything. But we need to service the members of our community as it is. And I know that a lot of work went into finding the area and buying that land where the proposed tower is to go, the well and the tower to go, over the rails and trails there. It may not be the liking to everybody, but it's probably one of the better places to put it, because we may need to put another one down on San Lucas in the future. We don't know. This is something that needs to be done. I know it's a lot of money and it's going to hurt people financially, but it's something that's going to be the best for the town of Milton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Well, good evening, Mrs. Weeks. How are you?
Jenny Weeks, Clifton Street, Milton. I just have a couple of questions. Of the past debt that we have incurred, how much of it has been repaid? Or are we only paying the interest at this point?
I believe Mrs. Rogers can respond to that.
The current debt service the town has is just the shipbuilders, well treatment facility, and Wagaman's. So that's $895,000 that we've been paying on for 3 years
So
at
we
this
are
point.
paying on the principal.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, that's what I wanted to know. This 500,000 gallon tank, I understand the need for it. What I want to know is, will that be enough to accommodate the coming growth of the 1,400 houses, the ones on there? And the only reason I'm asking is, if not, how are we going to get them water in the future? Are we going to be back here looking at doing this again?
What I can tell you is the grand reannexation, part of their conditions are that they will construct a well, a treatment facility, and an elevated tower.
Great, wonderful.
At their expense.
Wonderful. I also want to know, is there still a impact fee when a building permit is given? Is there an water impact fee charged?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me what that fee is, please?
I would defer to Mrs. Rogers because I don't want to misquote.
$2,000 per unit.
2,000. I would like you to know that it's a house being built next door to me. Artesian is charging an impact fee of $8,000
That is for wastewater.
for wastewater.
Yes, ma'am.
That does not include any of the piping or attaching or anything, just an impact fee.
That's the impact
I think
fee.
we seriously need to look at raising our impact fees a little, not to 8,000, of course. Because, and if I may say why, this has no reflection on this council, all right? Absolutely none. But in the past, previous councils made what I think is a bad decision and allowed Dogfish 2 wells for which they paid the town no licensing fee, no usage fee, nothing, and all of their beer is made with free water. We need to raise the fees so that the people in this town are not responsible for the future.
I can tell you that the impact fee for water is in discussion within the water committee at this time, and the preliminary feeling I get from it is there will be a recommendation to raise it slightly going forward.
Absolutely, because if you do, you could raise several million in the 10 or 20 years that it's going to take to reduce
Yes,
it.
and
Thank you.
we know that, but thank you for that information, and I appreciate it.
I have one other comment.
Please.
Okay, so the referendums for water that we've had before, a lot of people don't vote in our referendums. I don't know if you caught those numbers. The total number of voters were 384, 292, 531, and 345. There are 3,428 people in this town as of 21. Granted, they're not all old enough to vote. But certainly there's more than 300 people that care about.
I think the number that votes is probably closer to about 1,800 because it's based on properties with a referendum and not necessarily in voting individuals.
My point.
But your point is the same. But I will make a comment to you. I voted in every one of those referendums and I voted yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to comment on her. She asked about the impact fees. I can let her know for sure that our last water committee meeting, we discussed that, and we are planning on bringing something to the council to approve.
Just to explain fees, we have to be able to justify in our own minds that the fee that our fee is not exorbitant or overpriced. So we have to do a little bit of homework before we actually establish a fee level. That's just a good practice. It's a practice the town has always held. You know, when you get a fee increase, it's not because we feel like raising it, it's because we can justify it. All right, last call for citizen comments, questions.
Anyone online?
Anybody online that needs to weigh in?
Any written comments?
All right, well, with that being said,
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your comments and questions. Next item on the agenda,